Okay, so we got those 3 steps. And the last step is not really a question as so much as just a call on you to be innovative and to weave a story out of the relationship that the topic has to you, the relationship you have with the topic, and the purpose and function of the debate space into a rhetorical artifact that you will call, yes, God, the one AC. It's that simple. Answering questions 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the hardest parts. I do not doubt the creativity or the intelligence that any of y'all have. I always find that my 1ACs seem to be dull to me. I can just read them really good. But other people's 1ACs are so creative, Black Gold, for instance. What do you say? You know, when you're able to construct a story so beautiful that the argument is made and you didn't even know. It's like the power of TV. That's the power of voice and story that I don't think that our counterparts or our cohorts at these other camps are going to be able to stand toe to toe with us with. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we have that with us. Okay, so now we got the 1AC, right? The 1AC is just a big creative glorification of the stuff that you want to say in the 2AR anyway, right? Should be. Everything that's in the 1AC should be all that you need and more. I challenge you all to get to a point where y'all practice with y'all 1AC so much that you don't need 2AC blocks or evidence. To where all you would need is a pen and a piece of paper and your brains. And maybe even not that. You can just go in and execute because that's your baby. It's your AF case. We speak first and last. And when we construct our affirmatives, there seems to be this misconception, and I'm glad that we are thinking about how it is that we're going to answer other arguments like framework and capitalism or whatever the hell else, right? However, that should not be our sole concern when we go to construct our arguments, right? You figure out what you want to say first and construct that. Then we can deal with what they got to say. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so we've got to the 1AC, right? Which is just a large exaggeration of what we want to talk about in the 2AR. So how do we go about defending this, right? What does the 2AC do? Okay, yes, the 2AC re-emphasizes the affirmative, right? But you have to do so in a way that's conducive for debate. It's about argumentation, right? Write this down. Conceptualize the affirmative's impacts and context. That was repetitive.
Conceptualize the affirmative's impact.
Conceptualize the affirmative's impacts in terms of the negative arguments. Right? Let me explain how you do this. Let's use the prime example, framework, right? All of our asks will talk about exclusion. All of our asks will talk about some sort of violence, right? There's a lot of ways in which we can tie them down to that. We can talk about the people that they did it against, right? You have black students standing in front of you. You have women students standing in front of you. You have black women students. You have gay students. And you decided to make restrictions about what it is that I can say, right? That's on the people, right? But we can also talk about it in the context of the space. And the place that's supposed to promote and support deliberation and in-depth argumentation, you have decided to close off a whole section of thought because it wasn't predicted. Duh. It's kind of the point, right? We can do it with the plays. The NDT was down in Atlanta, correct? And me and Toya had this affirmative, or we had a Trayvon Martin, Troy Davis affirmative, right? Unfortunately, we didn't get to read it, but we was ready to talk about why it is that you want to reject the conversation about race, especially in Georgia. Right next door to Florida. Seminole County is right down the road. Right? And so you can contextualize the impacts of your affirmative to all of the negative arguments. Right? There's several ways in which you can do this as well in terms of debate. And this is how a lot of people go around with their stuff. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about there's two types of 2ACs. Two types. There's the one, this is from you, right here. Some Davon piece right here. There's the ones that will throw everything at you, everything that they have, right? Either A, because they don't know what to do, or B, because that's just their strategy, to try to distract you, right? There's those type of 2ACs, the kitchen sink strategy. And then you have those 2ACs that are just going to give you the 2AR again, and the 2AC. They're just going to let you know that you have messed up by even participating in the debate, and that you ought to be shamed and that you should go home. Correct, Tori? Bye-bye. Right, does that make sense? Right? And so when you go to think about how you want to deliver your 2AC, you need to think about what it is that the claims that your apps make, right? Affirmatives function in several different ways. I will start with the way I like my affirmatives to work, which is that we rely on a uniqueness question. And what this means is that we're going to characterize the status quo as terrible right now. There's just nothing that we can do. We have to move on. Change is necessary. Even if it's not sufficient, too bad. We have to hope for a better day, right? These are affirmatives that will say the 1AC is to try and die for the affirmative. I love it because it puts us at risk already, right? Because it forces you as the affirmative to have that you either with us or against us. If you're with us, then we won. If you're against us, then we won, right? Does that make sense? Okay. These are the style of affirmatives that was characterized as the status quo as not an alternative, right? What is the strategic purpose of this? This means that any negative argument that they go for that does not have an alternative or does not have an articulation of the outcome of that position being different from the status quo is automatically a loser, right? Does that make sense? So if you defend the status quo, if you run a diss ad, if you kick out of your alternative on the K, you know, if your counter plan would inevitably be the status quo, you go for case, all of that results in a vote for the status quo, and our 1AC is a direct turn to that. It's a direct indictment of the status quo. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Second type, you got I think Iggy was the master of this one. The root cause affirmatives. Anything that you say that's going to be bad was the product of whatever we was talking about in the 1AC to begin with. So if we talked about white supremacy, I don't care if you read politics to Nietzsche to black feminism, white supremacy is the cause. And you have started at the wrong place. And if you started with white supremacy, then nothing that you said is competitive. Another game called I Win, right? This has some strategic value because it forces not only the negative to respond to the affirmative, but also defend its position and its orientation of knowledge and of knowledge production, right? Which the uniqueness type of affirmatives, the try and die type of affirmatives don't do that, right? Whereas this one forces the negative to have a defense of their epistemology or ontology. Okay. Does that make sense? Then you have the I don't care apps. This is just like, we came to have some fun. I don't give a damn about what you're talking about. Whatever, we're not defending nothing until you say something, right? And then once you say something, then we'll have something to say because whatever you said was bad. Right. This is what we call distracting affirmatives, right? We call these nothings, if you will. These affirmatives are tricky to deal with because you have to watch how you respond. A little bit on the negative preview side to this because what they're going to do is impact turn everything that you've said. You shouldn't have said nothing, right? It's going to be their argument. So, for those of you who debate against this, I urge you in the 1NC not to say anything either. Right, just perform. I do it all the time. You wanna, run this, it's a specific word for it, I can't think of it right now.
Deferral.
Thank you. Deferral affirmatives, right? If you wanna defer on me in the 1AC, I'm gonna defer on you in 2AC, and the 1NC, right? Because what are you gonna do now? You can't impact turn or nothing. We didn't say anything either. George is good for this. I got y'all cards. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is this like 8